as it was announced earlier, we are starting half an hour early, so we can end at half hour early, so everyone can be able to rest in the next set. So please welcome Venerable Người Hải.
Please have a seat. So please feel free to ask your questions. Does somebody have a question? Yes. Yes, you there. Hi.
I have a question for you. Do you see Buddhism facing the same discrimination as it did in the past now, even though it's in the States, religion, it's a freedom of religion? I ask that because how I see Buddhism right now, all our leaders and mentors and pretty much leaders are non-Buddhists, and I see that as something that's kind of hard to look at as for my young adults, because I'm in the shadow of those elitists that are Catholics, because I feel that they are in control of a lot of things that's going on, and I just want to know how to, as myself, how do I go through this obstacle and conquer it, and for the future young adults.
Yes, thank you for your question. So you're talking about in the Vietnamese community, outside of Vietnam, maybe, right? The exile community. Okay. Well, first of all, I'm not sure if I would say Buddhism is being discriminated against or oppressed outside of Vietnam. And in the United States, you have the freedom to believe as you want, right? So, in terms of the broader American public, no, I think Buddhism is actually in a pretty decent situation here. As far as the leadership within the exile community, you said it's primarily Catholic. I would say, if you want to see more Buddhist leaders, become the leader that you want. I think that's the challenge for the young generation, is to step up and become the leaders that you want to see. But then, at the same time, I take what I say on this issue with a grain of salt, because I'm new to the Vietnamese Buddhist community. I did my ordination, my Bhikshu ordination at Phật in San Gabriel 3 years ago, but I didn't move into the temple. I was overseas in South Korea and Nepal. I didn't move into the temple until a year ago. So I'm just learning about Buddhism in the Vietnamese community now. That's my opinion, but then I may not be the best person to ask that question of. But I would say become the leaders that you want to see. Yes.
Yes, I'd like to also continue on with this question. I think what Jimmy was saying was, when you're talking about presidential figures or those type of leaders. So to elaborate on his question, I think that in a way it's would it be a conflict for, like, as a Buddhist, let's say for Buddhist monk or belief, to pursue that type of leadership skills for the political arena, stuff like that? Would you think that that's maybe a conflict of interest or contradicting the beliefs of Buddhism?
If your motivation in doing that kind of work, those kinds of activities, is to be of benefit to others, and you engage in that work without anger, without resentment, without hatred, and do so out of compassion, as I said, in order to benefit others, then it is still Dharma work. It's very much in line with the Dharma. But if people, whether in the Vietnamese community or not, in other communities in America, want to engage in that kind of work out of anger and hatred, or because they want power. They want, out of pride. Well, then it doesn't matter what the religion is, it's no good. Their activities are poisoned, right? So I think the key thing, no matter what activities we engage in, the key thing is to do so with the proper motivation, which is always to be of benefit to others. A real leader is a servant. A real leader is a servant whose first and primary purpose is to mentor and teach others. Yes, thank you for your question.
I have a question. When you're talking about Bodhisattva way earlier, and then I think I read one of the story about the Buddha life, the previous life, in the Bodhisattva way also. One of the first precepts is not killing, right? And then Venerable Hoằng, he killed himself. And then also the Buddha story about the previous life, he not killed himself, but one of the lions or the hungry, and then he donated his wife and his kid. Yeah, he donated his life and his wife also to feed that lion or the tiger. I don't exactly remember what it is. But so did that violate the first precept that not killing? Another question waiting.
Actually, I think that story from the Jataka tales about the Buddha's previous life, he didn't donate his wife and child to the hungry tiger. It was, he donated his own body. Yeah, he donated his own body to feed that hungry tiger. And then there's the case of Venerable Taekwondo who sacrificed his own life. There's a difference. So yes, there is a precept against killing, and suicide is bad. Someone who, out of depression, wants to commit suicide is creating the negative karma of murdering, even though they're murdering themselves, okay? So suicide is not in accordance with the Dharma. It creates negative karma. But in the case of the Buddha, in his previous life as a bodhisattva, his motivation wasn't out of depression or anger or something to throw away his own life. His motivation was to help this tiger and her cubs. In the case of Venerable Taekwondo, his motivation wasn't to, he didn't kill himself out of depression. He did it to bring international attention and then benefit to the Buddhist community because of the oppression that they were experiencing in Vietnam at that time. So there's a difference. There's definitely a difference. So sometimes bodhisattvas can engage in behavior because their minds are different. They're not crazy like we are. They're not ignorant like we are. So they can engage in behavior that we cannot engage in. For us, it would be negative karma. For them, it's bodhisattva activity. Because they have real compassion, great compassion, and real wisdom. For the rest of us, we have to be careful. Because if we, on the surface, if we appear to break precepts, so these monks who have given their lives, and this, the Buddha as a bodhisattva who gave his life, they appeared to be breaking precepts, but actually they were engaging in genuinely compassionate activity. We have to be careful if we say, well, I'll break this precept out of compassion. We have to be very careful because maybe it's really not bodhisattva activity. Maybe it's just our stupidity or our pride. We have to really know what our motivation is before we before we act. Thank you. Yes.
My question to you is, does Buddhists have a gender discrimination? If not, how come I always seen Buddhist monk always appears at before the Buddhist monk ladies? Thank you.
That's an interesting question. On Facebook, I'm part of a Buddhist, like a Western Buddhist monks and nuns group. And this is one of the questions that come up. What you're referring to are these 8, I've heard them called different things. The 8 severe rules is one thing that nuns have. And one of these rules, it's something like even a senior bhikshuni is supposed to bow to a brand new novice monk. Right? A brand new novice monk is supposed to be higher than a senior bhikshuni. I forget the rest of them. I've seen the list, but I forget the rest of them. But basically, this is in the monastic law, what we call the Vinaya, that nuns are lower than monks. But, this is interesting, there are other parts of the Buddha's teaching where he makes it quite clear that women are equal in their ability to become enlightened, equal to monks in their ability to become enlightened. In the Theravada tradition, in which there was so much discrimination that in centuries past that the bhikshuni ordination completely died out. There really aren't any bhikshunis in the Theravada tradition now. Actually, there are some in Sri Lanka, but they went, I think, to Taiwan to get the ordination. But there was the nuns were considered to be of such little worth that the bhikshuni ordination completely died out in the Theravada tradition. Despite that, though, they have a text called the Therigatha, which means the stories of the elder nuns. And there are stories in there which make it quite clear that nuns were equal in their capacity to monks.